I'm just gonna do it. There's a video topic that I see pop up every now and again in the booktube sphere, which is this idea that men don't know how to write women. Yeah, that's a big fat myth. In fact, if I had to say one gender is worse at writing the opposite gender, I would argue possibly that women are way worse at writing men than men are at writing women. And I think this is best exemplified by Nicholas Sparks, the romance champion of the 90s who outsold almost everyone. And legitimately too, because they didn't fudge the numbers back then like they do now. So yeah. And you kind of sit there, because I recently went on a Nicholas Spark kick and reread a couple books and read books I hadn't read before, and I kind of went, what the heck? What is a male doing not dominating this genre? So here's the thing about Nicholas Sparks. I read A Walk to Remember back in middle school, so that was 20 odd years ago. And I remember really liking it at the time and watching the movie and everything. And then recently, clips from the movie popped up in my YouTube feed, and I was watching them and was like, feeling a bit nostalgic, I'm going to revisit it. So I reread A Walk to Remember, and overall it was pretty good. My biggest complaint about it is probably the length of the story is not quite right. It either should have been shorter or longer. I personally would have leaned into being shorter, but he would add enough details and scenarios that you're like, you probably could have expanded on this a little bit and fleshed this out a little bit more, but he didn't, so whatever, the length is the length. And then I rewatched the movie, and you know, it's a really charming, cute little movie, and Mandy Moore is always fun. And then I went, you know what? This was the only Nicholas Sparks book I ever read. So let's give The Notebook a chance, because that's the one, right? Oh god, I couldn't get through it. And then I watched the movie and I went, okay, I think I see what it is. It's the fact that Ryan Gosling and Rachel McAdams have amazing chemistry. And that makes up for the fact that, oh my god, there's a lot of problems with that story. Like, a lot. So I was like, but you know what? That was his debut novel. That was what it is. Let me give another one a shot. So I went to the library and randomly picked one off the shelf, and it was, I think, The Choice. I read about half of it, and then I went, hey, Nicholas Sparks, what the heck is with your characters cheating? Because there was a scene in The Choice where, so the girl is practically engaged to another guy when she moves to this town with our hero in it, right? And our hero is immediately infatuated with her and quite likes her or whatever. And the most boring scenes to get them together happen, and then she's basically, there's one scene where she decides she's gonna sleep with the hero and does, and then afterwards she's sitting on the couch with him and her actual boyfriend calls her, and she's talking on the phone with her boyfriend while rubbing this guy's leg, the hero. And I go, in what world is this not cheating? Like, in what world is this okay? I am sorry about the dog. She is practically engaged to this other guy, and she is sleeping with another one, and we're supposed to think that is a very romantic scenario. And just like The Notebook, there was nothing wrong with fiance, except maybe he works a little too much. And it's like, okay, girl, just have the guts to break it off before you get into bed with another guy. And it was I don't know. And I was like, what the heck is with this, okay? Because, like, what the heck, right? Like, these books were all over the place. Everyone was, like, Nicholas Sparks was the romance novelist. Every book he wrote was a bestseller. Almost every book got turned into a movie. Even The Choice got turned into a movie with big name actors in it, big releases and stuff. And then I realized, if you couple it with the fact of this myth that floats around of men don't know how to write women, suddenly a lot of things start to make sense. Because here's the reality. Women related to Nicholas Sparks' characters way more than they did female written romance novels. And why is that? Because I think this myth comes from the idea that men only write simpering girls, like, tied to the train tracks and have to be saved, damsel in distress types. So first of all, I don't know about you, but I don't think I've ever actually read a book like that in real life. I mean, there's the joke of it existing, but when I think back to most of the literature I've read, at worst, there were, like, no female characters at all, but usually the women have some gumption, some something to them, and men do write women a lot. They come up a lot in literature in different scenarios. I mean, you have Anna Karenina, you have Gemma Bovary, etc., for empowered women, or, Mrs. Chatterley's Lover, or was it Lady Chatterley's Lover? Whatever it is. Women who take their sexuality into their own hands. That's a very common theme, and those are books that are written by men. So, in books written by men that women overwhelmingly relate to. So where do we get this idea that men can't write women, or that men only write simpering fools and damsels in distress? I mean, yes, the fairy tales, but if you look at the fairy tales too, the men are nothing to speak of either. They're cardboard cutouts of manly goodness, usually. Not even, like, strength. It's usually cleverness or moral superiority, right? And they have no character either. So they're wooden, the girls are wooden, but these are fairy tales. These are more about, they're not about characterization necessarily. So maybe in the 1950s, your Penny Dreadfuls of the Victorian era, the cheap paperbacks, you would start to see it. And I think you do start to see it for more contemporary examples, maybe like the 80s action movies, where, you get a buxom blonde who just is there to look pretty, but that is specifically designed to cater to a male audience, and no one considers those movies good, and no one considers the literature from before that good either. And I think at the closest you get to that simpering damsel might be the innocent character of something like Lucy in A Tale of Two Cities, or Mina in Dracula. But those characters are supposed to be innocent and a little naive, and that's still a characterization. There's nothing wrong with innocent women, is there? But most of the time, again, as I've seen in literature, you get fairly strong-minded, interesting women, even in the male-written books. And then if you want to get past the exploitation films, you have like Marion Ravenwood in Indiana Jones. And in fact, the character people hate the most in the Indiana Jones series has to be Willie. And I think for obvious reasons. And I'll be honest, she's kind of the most modern of all of the Indiana Jones heroines at the end of the day. It's a little weird. So no, men can write women. The worst they do is that men, generally speaking, are not necessarily, like, overall, like, there are some good male writers who can write really good characterizations and stuff, but most of the time what I see is that their characters are slightly flat, and that goes for both the male and the female characters in the story, that they're just creating a person to fulfill the needs of the story and the plot. So that's the worst you get from male writers, is just flat, one-note characters who are kind of boring, but the plot itself is interesting enough so you're reading the book mostly for the plot. And in some ways, maybe even the flatness of the characters is a little necessary so you're not getting distracted. Now, a really, really good book would obviously give them characterization that would fit the plot, but that's another matter entirely. However, when women write characters, so generally speaking, women put a lot of characterization into their characters, and not necessarily in a good way. So I think some of the best written characters have come from women, and I think one of the best written female characters ever has to be Scarlett O'Hara from Gone with the Wind. She is a beacon of strength and guts and kind of don't need no man. But that's part of it. It's just that's part of her character arc, is that she stands up for herself. And she is very strong-minded. And you know what? She's kind of bitchy too, and a lot of people don't like her because of it. But she is the primary example, I think, in literature of the strong female archetype. And yeah, she is deeply unlikable. And that's a good thing, because that's a good characterization. That being said, all these romance novels, not even romance novels, some of the like speculative fiction, or like I was saying about like Yellowface by R.F. Kong, like some of these characters are like almost, oh, I need to put too much into it so they have character, and then you just create, first of all, a non-character. It's just like, I don't even know. And my friend and I talked about how people will substitute like details in lieu of personality, and that's a huge thing I notice. Like, you'll just go down a checklist of like, yep, this, she does all these things, therefore it's her personality, and it's like, no, she doesn't have one. But then, when you think about the men that these women are working off of in these books, and you go, oh my god, like, toxic to the max. And I don't even like using that word toxic necessarily, but that's the only way to describe these male characters. And these women fawn over them. I mean, like, look at A Court of Thorns and Roses with the Tam Lin. I mean, he is an absolute ass. And like I said in my Tam Lin video, Tam Lin as a character is an asshole already. And every time I see women, because I don't think I've ever seen a male try to rewrite that story, the Tam Lin ends up being even worse than what was originally there. Like, women, you don't know how to write men. And it's not that complicated. Like, the biggest thing to know about men is that they're not really going to show emotion. Oh, I know. But that means that they can display a lot more than just feelings. Like, they can show love for the girl by saving her. It's great, and we all love that. Not by crying in front of her. It just makes... It gives most women the ick, okay? And we can say that, right? So, yeah. So what is it about Nicholas Sparks? Because, like, his plot lines are, like, some of the most toxic ones I've ever seen. At the end of the day, I think it's because his characters are kind of one note, and they're kind of bland. And you kind of can forgive them their transgressions, as horrible as they are, because they themselves are not necessarily horrible people as displayed on the page. They're just kind of non-people. They're so flat and boring that they don't really do anything. So the problem with these female written works is that you try to put too much into these characters, and then you end up with these characters that are just like... They're pure evil sometimes. Like, they're selfish, and they're mean, and they're bitchy, and we're supposed to like them, and we're supposed to be rooting for them to get with these men, and these men are all unlikable, but at the end of the day, I'm like, dude, run! That girl is not worth anything. And at least Nicholas Sparks doesn't do that. And I think in some ways even these love triangles, as like messed up as they are kind of things women like. I mean, that's why the love triangles were so popular for so long. This idea that you can have several men fawning over you. Yeah, women like that, even though that is the most unrealistic fantasy in the world. Because, again, most men, if they see you're taken, are gonna back off. Like, there's a bro code. And bros are pretty good about it. And if a bro doesn't back off of your woman, run, girl. Run for the hills. He is not your knight in shining armor, and that's not a good thing, okay? Yeah. So as bad as it is, it's like, at the end of the day, men are way better at writing women than women are writing men. And the absolute worst part about this is, I think women are capable of writing the best characterization that they can, because women do show emotion and do like to put those personality quirks and details in, and women don't like flat characters. And I do think that's the biggest complaint that women actually have when they're saying men don't know how to write women. It's that they don't like that the women are flat. But most of us would prefer the flat character over the crazy, the absolute crazy that some of these other characters are. But yeah, it's like we are capable of doing so much more. But we don't.